dear student, again welcome in online classes of Buddha International School, one of the biggest hub for online classes in entire Shekhawati. See my dear student, as you know that in last lecture we are discussing about the Mughal administration. Particularly we are discussing about the different kind of system and the kind of new innovations started by the early 6 Mughals. And same my dear student, here in this lecture also we want to continue the same topic, that is regarding the Mughal administration. First of all, we are going to start about the Mansabdari system. You know well, this system was introduced by Mughal Emperor Akbar the Great, you know well. And about this system I think more or less you know well, but again we are going to discuss about this. First of all, you should know Mansab means a place or rank. Mansab means a place or a rank, and especially this place or rank is is there of a person in the court of Akbar. Means the different nobles are there na, they were given a kind of rank and place in the court of a ruler, and as per the rank and place, the particular officer is given a kind of land by the ruler. So that is known as the mansab of that officer, of that mansabdar we can call. And that land was given by the ruler for this, that you keep this land with you, whatever the tax is there that you can have with you, but in the time of emergency you have to support me by providing the number of men and the number of horsemen and other kind of military support we can say. So they are known as mansabdar. So again we are going to start, my dear student, about the mansabdari system. You know well, mansab means a kind of place or rank. And the Akbar reorganized the whole machinery of civil and military services on the new lines. He was very innovative, just like Sher-Shah Suri. That's why he want to reorganize the complete machinery of civil and military services on the new lines. And this system, Mansabdari system, was a kind of innovation of Akbar, we can say, that was known as a kind of Mansabdari system. According to Mansabdari system, as per this system, the Mansabdar drew pay according to their rank and had to furnish the number of men indicated in their grades when called upon to do so. So whatever the rank is there of that particular Mansabdar in the court of in the court of a ruler, so as per the rank, the Mansabdar have to he is going to do the payment, as well as whatever the other indicated things are there, he have to pay and he have to provide for the ruler. The highest grades were the reserved for the royal family only. Means whatever the highest grades are there for a Mansabdar, on higher grade only the royal family, the members are there, they are recruited for the higher grade, and some other grades are there for that kind of lower grade. Some other nobles, other people can also recruited by the ruler. Mansabdari troops were recruited by the Mansabdar himself, and the king, however, keep a check on malpractices by the Mansabdar, and descriptive roles of the soldiers were also maintained. So whatever the troop that Mansabdar have to maintain, especially for the ruler. As I already said in the beginning, that as per the rank and jat, the particular noble will be given a kind of mansab. Whatever the tax is there, that Mansabdar can have, and for this, the tax that Mansabdar have to use for the purpose of maintaining the kind of troop. That troop the king requires, especially whenever he need in any kind of emergency. So simply we can say that this troop is there now, that is recruited by the Mansabdar himself only. Means the king is not going to decide that to whom you have to recruit or not recruit. Okay, this is the responsibility. This was the responsibility of Mansabdar himself only, that to whom and how how many numbers should be there of the soldiers. That was also decided by the Mansabdar only. Second thing, the king, however, keep a check. Yes, this was the duty of a king only. Means what the Mansabdars are doing, they are recruiting properly or not, to whom they are recruiting, okay, and they are really working well or not. If any kind of malpractices, if they are somewhere doing wrong, in illegal activity, if they are busy, so that kind of things are there, they are checked by the ruler. So in this way we can say, in this matter there is a kind of interfere of the ruler in Mansabdars also, and there is descriptive roles, and the roles of soldiers, they are also maintained or not properly. This was also observed, looked after by the rulers. Mansabdars were, classified into 33 grades according to the number of horsemen. Yes, my dear student, there are the different types of grades were given to as per their number of horsemen. Okay, so not only one grade was there in Mansabdar, approximately 33 grades were there, but these grades were decided as per the number of horsemen, that how many horsemen they are having to be supplied by an official to the king. Okay, that to the official, what is the number of horsemen that he is supplying to the ruler. So as per the number of horsemen supplied by the official to the king, the grades decided, okay, by the ruler in this way. So the grades were ranged from a command of 10 to 10,000 das hazari. We can call 10,000 as a das hazari also. So these 33 grades were there. They are from 1 to we can say das hazari also. Suppose if a officer is supplying one horseman, so that grade was considered as a very lower grade, we can say. And a officer who is supplying more than 10,000, maybe 1 lakh horsemen, so that was considered as one of the, we can say, highest grade of Mansab and Mansabdar. They are known as das hazari if they are giving the 10,000 horsemen to the ruler. So these grades were decided by the, as per the number of horsemen to be supplied by the officer to the ruler. So I hope regarding the Mansabdar, you understood that what was the kind of Mansabdari system. First of all, you should know, my dear student, this Mansabdari system was started by the Akbar only. Why this system was started by Akbar? Because he wanted to reorganize the complete military system. That's why he introduced a new system of this that was known as Mansabdari system. As per the Mansabdari system, whatever the Jat and rank is there of an officer, as per the Jat and rank, he given the kind of land by the ruler. Okay, and whatever the tax is there of that particular land, that Mansab, the Mansabdar can use for enabling and for maintaining the number of horsemen that they have to supply to the ruler whenever the ruler want the kind of help and support from the Mansabdars. Then after next, relationship between a Mansabdar and Jagir. Mansabdar, well here, but what is Jagir here? Here you should know. Jagir, my dear student, it was a kind of, grant of a land given by the emperor to the Mansabdar to enable him to raise fund in the form of rent and taxes. Means in during the time of, in the chapter number 2, where chapter number 3 regarding, Delhi Sultanate, that we have already, finished. In chapter number 2 also we have discussed about this, the kind of grant of land given by the ruler to a person. They are known as iktadars. At the time this land was known as Ikta, and the owner of that land was known as Iktadar. Here also the same, but only the name is going to change. Here also the same, my dear student, that the Jagir was a kind of a land that was given by the emperor to the Mansabdar, and that piece of land was known as Jagir, and the owner of that land known as Jagirdar. So simply we can say that Jagir was a kind of grant of land given by the emperor to the Mansabdar. Why? So that they can enable him to raise fund in the form of rent and taxes. So whatever the land is given, issued by the ruler to the Mansabdar, so that the land and we can say the rent and the tax of that particular Jagir, the Mansabdar can have, and they can use that tax and the rent to enable their army, to enable to maintain their troop, whatever they are having. The fund would meet the personal administrative needs and maintenance cost of his Sawar also. Sawar should know very well the number of horsemen. So Mansabdar, if they want to know, they have to maintain it. It was the kind of, it is mandatory for them, because then only they will be known as the Mansabdar. If they are not giving any kind of horsemen to the ruler, then they are not going to have this kind of post at this title also, even as a Mansabdar. So simply that to maintain the troop, okay, they require the fund, they require the tax, they require the money. So from where they will get the money? They will get the money from this Jagir only, that Jagir that given by the emperor. So you understood, I think, that what was the kind of relationship between Jagir and Mansabdar. So simply we can say that Jagir was a kind of land given by the emperor to the Mansabdar, so that the whatever the tax is there now of that Jagir, the Mansabdar can use to maintain the number of horsemen and to maintain the troop, so that they can send, they can modify, they can organize the troop in a very good manner, so that in the time of need they can send, they can offer to the ruler, they can send for the king whenever he want, whenever he require their help and support. So this was the relationship between the Mansabdar and Zagir. I hope, is it clear to all? Next and last, we can say agrarian relationship. Agrarian relation means the relations related to agriculture. You all know very well, my dear student, you have seen the last we can say all 6 Mughal rulers, they really maintained their system very nicely. Their administration system was also very nice, simply we can say, and really they know very well that the main source of income was the land tax only, and the land tax will be, they can earn more than if there is a good production. So for this, what they maintain the kind of good relationship with the farmers, with the peasants also. They motivated the farmers that you should grow more and more crop, because they know very well if the good production will be there, then automatically there will be the income for the royal treasury. That's why their relationships are there, they are really very nice. Okay, they modified the land, they measured the land, they provided the kind of loan to the farmers also, so that the farmers can grow the good crop. They supported by providing them the kind of manure, okay, and other support also if they required, they really supported them, so that the good production, good yielding will be there, then only the good income also there. So simply we can say in this period a peasant purchased his land as long as he paid land revenue. One system was there that the peasant can have the loan, the peasant can purchase the land till then only, till he is continuing paying the tax to the ruler. Suppose if a peasant is not paying the tax of that land to the ruler, simply he will not consider as the owner of that land. Means simply we can say that ownership was there till then only, till he is paying continuously the tax to the ruler. Number 2, he could also sell his land and his children inherited it after his death. This was a very good system. Those are the owners of that land. They are having the full right and authority to sell their land to the other. Number 1. Number 2, if suppose there is a death of that farmer, then his children also can inherit whatever the land is there after the death of the peasant. So simply this system was also very good, we can say, that no one going to encourage their land. If the farmer is not there, then there the children are there, they will be the owner of that land. Then the peasants who owned the land and tilled them were called khudkhast. Yes, it's very important, you should know, my dear student, that at that time who were known as khudkhast. Simply the peasants who are having their own land and tilled them were called khudkhast. They paid land revenue at customary rates and tilled the land of jamidars and barely managed to eke out of existence. Such as peasants were called pahis. So there were the 2 types of peasants. One, they are known as khudkhast, and another one, the pahis. Here you should know what is the difference between khudkhast and pahis. Again I am repeating, the peasants who lend the land and till them were called khudkhast. They are having their own land and they are tilling their land by their own equipments. By using their own equipments, they are known as khudkhast only. They paid land revenue at customary rate. That whatever the customary rate decided by the ruler, they are paying the tax as per the customary rate only. But they, on the other, plough and bullock peasants who didn't purchase their own land, plough and bullocks were till the land of jamidars and barely managed to eke out the existence. Such peasants were called pahis. Simply we can say pahis were those peasants, they are not having their own land, they are not having their equipment just like bullocks as well as plough. They are going to till their farmlands by the help of jamidars, by the support of the jamidars and other, those are the owner of the land are there, they are known as pahis. So simply we can say there is a very we can say small difference between the pahis and khudkhast. Khudkhast are the landowners, they are having their own land, they are having their own equipments like bullocks and plough, whatever they require, they are having their own, they are not going to take it from the jamidars and from other. Okay, and pahis are there, they are not having their own land even, means they are simply working on the land of jamidars, and other whatever the equipments are there, like tilling is there, plowing and other whatever the manure and other help and support they require. Okay, they require whatever the support, simply they have to take it from the jamidars only, because they are as a worker only, so they are known as pahis. So this type of system were there at the time. As per tradition, anyone first brought the land under cultivation was considered as its owner only. Who was considered as the landowner? The person who is going to brought the land under cultivation, that first person will be known as the owner of that land. Okay, and if the farmer is not paying the tax, if the land is barren, he is not going to be cultivated, then the ownership can be snatched easily by the ruler. This system was also there. A considerable section of the zamindars had the hereditary right of the collecting land revenue from a number of villages, and this was known as taluka or zamindari. So zamindars were given the kind of duty that a kind of village and the different talukas assigned to them, that you have to collect the tax from this particular taluka. You are the zamindar of this village, you are the zamindar of this taluka, and then the zamindar have the responsibility to collect the tax, and then the zamindar have to submit the tax to deposit the tax to the emperor. And in this way, my dear student, the zamindars are there, they are considered as the, we can say, rich society of that, we can say, empire. They are, so there is a kind of economic disparity also, because zamindars and nobles are there, they are going to become very rich, and the peasants, artisans, and like other laborers were there, their condition was really very poor. Why? Because as they are continuously paying the tax, as because of this tax, their condition is going to become, we can say, very miserable. So this class, this zamindari class was there, and it was considered as a very rich class at that time. Nobles and zamindars are there, they are very rich. It is said in the Aine Akbari written by Abul Fazl that at the times the zamindars are there, they are having, the very good number of, sawars, good number of, cannon, good number of horsemen, they are having good number of, soldiers. Those are the foot soldiers are there. It was in crores as well as in lakhs. So simply it is mentioned that they are really so powerful, they are having as power as the power lies with the king. So the king is not going to avoid and not going to neglect the zamindar also. Why? Because during the time of Aurangzeb, some zamindars are there, they are having so much power that even they can give the challenge to a ruler also. And it is seen in somewhere that at the time some of the zamindars are there, they are going to dethrone the rulers also by using their own power, because they are going to hide the actual thing with the ruler, that how many number of horses and what is the number of soldiers. Okay, even whenever the king requires their help and support, they are not going to support them. Why? Because they know very well that if the king is not, if king is defeated in this particular battle, definitely we are going to rule over that dynasty. So simply we can say that the zamindars are really very powerful at that time. Why? Because of the kind of responsibility given by the ruler to them of collecting the tax. They are not paying the tax properly, and as a result, they are luxurious. They are enjoying their luxurious lifestyle, and the condition of farmers and laborers and we can say artisans was really very miserable, we can say. So this is regarding the agrarian relationship. Really, in the we can say they promoted the farmers. They are having the good relationship. They increased the kind of trading activities. Okay, some import and export business were also there, especially like the dry nuts and other. They are going to import spices, cardamom. They are going to export also. Okay. So these all the activities have taken place during the Mughal Empire. Mughals supported a lot to the farmers, but a class of zamindars and nobles were there. They are very rich and powerful during the time of Mughal Empire. So this is all regarding the chapter Mughal Empire that we have discussed. Okay, all the different topics. First regarding the 6 Mughal rulers. After then administration system. Then after the Mansabdari, the relationship between Mansabdar and Jagir. Then after the agrarian relationship, the agrarian relations related to, we can say, agriculture, about Jamidars, Pahich and Khudkast. I hope regarding this chapter there is no doubt. Even if any query, any doubt is there, my dear student, feel free, you can discuss. This chapter is very important, as I said in the beginning only. In your upcoming exam, most of the questions we can say are from this chapter only. So be prepared well, go through every topic, and if any doubt, any query is there, you can discuss with me. Thank you. Have a nice day.